So Phil, you've reached the top of the game in sales. You're now at board level at Thomas Cook. What are the key areas in which networking's helped you in your career as a salesperson?
Well, it's quite interesting actually, because I think initially networking for me was almost entirely an internal thing. Whichever company I've worked at, it's always been about cross-departmental collaboration, and it's a bit of a buzzword that these days, but collaboration's been critical in making sure that you're kind of aiming for the right goal that's common to everybody internally. I think externally has been far more important latterly in my career. I found that a bit of outside influence and understanding of what's happening elsewhere in the industry, either from competitors or perhaps colleagues with different product lines, it's broadened thinking. And I think as you progress through your career, that actually becomes more and more important, because otherwise you kind of can become a little bit insular with your thought process. So I think that's been a big difference for me in the second half of my career compared to the first.
So it's interesting. So we were talking earlier, when people hear the word networking, they often get negative connotations, and they think of people trading business cards and elevator pitches over cold wine and warm canapes. You've gone straight to a different direction. You've gone straight for information and intelligence rather than a sales perspective. So you see networking as much broader than purely a sales thing, even for salespeople.
Yeah, 100%. And do you know what? I'd probably phrase it along the lines of idea generation. And I did. I was at an event. So an event that you and I have both attended before, where we talked about needing to understand what the best elevator pitch is and how to get somebody's attention. You know what really captures my attention? If somebody comes to me and says, I've got an idea, as an opening line, as opposed to, hi, here's my name, this is who I work for, this is what I represent. Something that generates a thought process and makes me think twice about an assumption or perhaps some creativity. That's what really floats my boat. And so for me, networking, you're right, it's not a great word. I think it's almost more about generating ideas from areas that you don't interact with necessarily on a day-to-day basis. And that's the best way of getting new ideas, because otherwise you're constantly surrounded by the same thought process. So for me, networking is really about idea generation.
You've reminded me of an interview I conducted 2 or 3 years ago with Phil Jones, who's the CEO of Brother UK. And I asked Phil, how do people sell to you? And Phil's had a very similar career journey to you. He's come through the sales and marketing line into a senior board position as well. I said, how do people sort of grab your attention and sell to you? And it was a very similar answer.
Right.
I don't want people coming up to me, he said, and just saying, I want to sell this to you, I want to pitch to you. But they need to know what my challenges are, what's important to me. And I think when people are saying to you, I have an idea, is that a similar type of thing? How do people sell to you?
Yeah,
I guess is the question.
It is a similar thing, but I'll tell you something that I still don't think works in today's world is cold calling. And it's interesting because cold calling still exists in loads of places. It's just the medium that's changed. So instead of the phone ringing all the time, probably LinkedIn's the best example, where I'll get a lot of random contacts from people or companies that I've never heard of, and that element of cold calling I don't think is really helpful to people at all. I think you need some sort of context as to why something is useful for a business. So there's an element of needing a bit of innovation in today's world about how to get an initial idea across. This is where networking, for want of a better word, is so valuable. Because it's one thing for me to get some random product offer or service offer on LinkedIn. It's a completely different thing for me to be at an industry conference, of which there are several that I attend. And actually, anybody who's there I know somewhere has a common interest with me, one way or another. And there's a context to the conversation. And so I think having that in place versus this sort of cold calling email dynamic that exists in today's world is hugely beneficial.
And I guess if someone wanted to reach out to you cold on LinkedIn, they're much better off finding someone who knows you and getting the introduction, giving you that context, rather than just coming in with a cold email.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, LinkedIn's a good example of a networking community which actually was set up to do exactly that, and has sort of morphed into this world where you can kind of just hook up and connect with anybody and everything, and actually having no context to do that, it's a bit of a hiding for nothing in my mind.
So last question, we first met at an event for graduates in the tourism industry, and you gave a great presentation on tips for graduates when it comes to networking in a sales career. You've said that actually networking became more relevant to you at a more senior stage of your career, so you might have people watching this video who are more junior in their career saying, well, I'll leave that for the moment. So what would you say to them?
I'd say don't make that conclusion, and perhaps I've put it across in the wrong way, because actually that's my experience, it's not my recommendation. So if I was to look back on my career, do I have any regrets? No, I don't have any at all. Is there anything I would have done differently? Yes, I would have networked externally at an earlier age, 100%, because it's only as I've got older and had the confidence to understand the value that can bring that I've properly appreciated it. And with reference to the event that we were at, the whole point of that event was to encourage younger people to network at an earlier stage, and I'm a big believer in that. I think that more and more some of the idea generation that we need in our businesses, and in the travel industry there's a lot of this from a technology perspective, you actually really benefit from youth with this, in order to bring in an outside set of eyes and a non-industry specific view of the world. And I think networking externally is something that I've relied on to deliver that exact same thing at a later stage in my career, whereas what I'm now finding is that a lot of the graduates that we bring in are starting to do that straight away, and I immediately see the commercial benefit and the benefit from a customer proposition perspective. And if I had my time again, I'd have done it much earlier. So I would definitely recommend people to do that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.